What's up, everybody? Did you guys catch that full moon last week? I hadn't really had a chance to talk about it, but took a picture of it because it was pretty awesome. So, this all started last week when I saw a video that I've seen years ago. And it's pretty cool how looking at the same thing years apart, you can draw two different conclusions from it. This has led me to thinking up my own allegory about the big picture of things that goes a step further than Plato's allegory of the caves. And basically, everybody's allegory is just a version of that. But it stops short and leaves out a whole dimension that is pretty well the most important part of everything. This might take a little while, but I hope you stick around and hear it out because it really works down to the smallest details. These are just the side notes because the big picture of things is already in my head. So get into your zone, be patient, because if you understand the basics that I'm talking about here, you'll probably walk away with a clearer perception of reality. We're going to start off with a thought experiment from KRS-One, and I'm going to take you from the neophyte mindset to the adept mindset. KRS-One says this is a 5,000-year-old technique to get people to understand themselves, which maybe, maybe not. But it is a good enough experiment that it may have been used by the ancients. So I'm going to count down from 3. And when I do, I want you to say this to yourself in your head. Ruckus rocks. Just say that, not out loud. Just say it to yourself. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you just heard your voice in your head say ruckus rocks, right? I mean, you heard it. So how is that even possible? Nothing was said out loud. Nothing made a sound wave. Your ears didn't pick up vibrations from the air, but yet you heard that voice say ruckus rocks. Now, one more thing. I want you to picture this in your head. Picture opening up your front door. Now, some people are better at visualization than others, but pretty much everybody just saw an image of them opening their front door. So, where did that image come from? How did you see it? Now, this is what KRS-One says, and the first time I heard this, it made sense. And no offense, because I'm sure he'll watch this video, but I now disagree. He used the example that they would write, "Know thyself," up on the wall, and the priest would point to that. You'd look at it and you'd say in your head, "Know thyself." And if you got it, then you understood that you were hearing that voice inside of your head. Well, whose voice are you hearing? According to him, that's the true self, the soul, the divine spark, which makes sense at the neophyte level because I'd say that the vast majority of people out there will go their entire lives chattering away in their head and never realize that there is some voice in their head talking to them. It's been there for so long and so persistently that you don't even recognize it's there. So understanding that there is a voice there talking to you is the first step. But is that the true self? Well, I say no. How many times has that voice in your head just rattled off the stupidest ideas all day long? Say you're having a hard time paying the rent, so that voice is telling you, well, you could just rob the gas station up the street, or you could steal a car and take it down to Mexico and sell it. That voice can tell you all kinds of dumb stuff, but it doesn't mean you're going to do it. As a matter of fact, that voice is usually your own worst enemy. This is going to take a few minutes to explain the big picture of what's going on here, but once you understand the big picture, then you know where that voice falls into place. You know where the true self falls into place. Here's one example of why that voice is not the true you. I'm going to put a line across the screen, and everything below that line is what's happening out in the physical world. Everything above that line is what's happening in my mind. Let's say this is me out in the physical world, and I tell KRS-One, know thyself. Now, who's doing the talking and who's doing the listening? Well, I'm the one talking, so KRS-One is the one listening. Now, let's go up above that line and see what's going on inside of my brain. My brain is controlling what the me in the physical universe does. And my brain is hearing this voice. So is my brain doing the talking or the listening? It's doing the listening. This voice will usually pull up several options. It'll say, well, you can say know thyself, or you can say know yourself. But ultimately, something inside of the brain makes a decision, tells the physical body to say know thyself to KRS-One. So everybody understand this concept. The one doing the talking is not the one doing the listening. Now let's get into the bigger picture of things. So if I can get this right, this might be the best explanation ever for life, the universe, and everything, but sometimes it's hard to turn thoughts into words. Okay, so there's this video game, right? And this video game represents the entire universe, everything in it. I'm over here playing this game where I'm at, you're playing it over where you're at from a different perspective. But everybody in the world is playing in the same video game. I'm playing my character, you're playing your character, and we're all playing from different locations, but on the same game board. So if I jump up and bump my head on a block here and a magic mushroom pops up, then I get to eat it, not you. You can come along later and it resets for you. It's the same game board. So anything my character does to change the game board or directly to another player affects the rest of the world and that other player. Now, this is where I'm hopefully going to be able to add in another dimension that I haven't heard anybody else talk about in any of their allegories. I am playing this game on my device. You are playing this game on your device. Every character in this game is being controlled by someone on a device. We're all playing the same game. We're all connected to the same internet, which we'll get to in a minute. But behind every character in the game is a device, and each device has its own unique perspective from that character's perspective, but everybody is still playing on the same game board. Everybody following so far? Now, that device is your brain. Your brain is just a tool. It's not who you really are. It's just the device. And you use this device to control your character in the game. So right now, I'm using my device to control my character, Static, and your character in the game is watching the video that the Static character made, because we're all playing the same game, just from different perspectives. Now, my device, my brain, has recorded everything that the character Static has ever done in this game and has stored all of that knowledge. Can't access all of it, but it's in there somewhere. Now, in my brain, I have this voice that talks to me all the time. Sometimes it's telling me to do crazy crap, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes it complains about the same thing over and over for days and days. Sometimes it tells me what a loser I am. And for most of us, if we're being honest, that voice is kind of an a-hole towards ourselves more than anything else. Now, how many times in life have you done something that you just knew it was a dumb idea? You get done doing something, I can't believe I just did that. Why would I do that? This voice isn't always on your side about things. But how many times have you had that voice in your head saying, yeah, if I see that MFer, I'm going to pop him in the nose and blah, blah, blah. And then when you came up to that character in the game, you just say, well, okay, just, you seen any deer? Sorry, I'm playing a redneck character now. Now, that voice wants the device to think that it is in control of it. And sometimes it is. But ultimately, it's not the one that makes the decisions for the character in the game, because how many times have you said you're going to do this and then not done it? Now, the brain is just a device. So the voice, the guy sitting behind everything, sometimes controlling the device, sometimes not, will not only talk inside the head to where the brain can hear it, but it also pulls up this old photograph file. And it'll put a picture of a monkey up on the screen for no reason whatsoever. It's just all of a sudden there's a picture of a monkey in your brain. So that voice sometimes does control the brain, the device, but it's ultimately up to this device what the character does in the game. The voice can be sitting there screaming punt, but then the device will say, oh, no, we're going to run. Well, that voice is the ego. The ego wants you to think that it has supreme authority over how you control your character in this game, but it really doesn't. It's just so adamant about things and so ever presently there at the screen that most people think that the ego is the true self. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how many buttons it pushes on the screen. If the device doesn't want to do that, well, then the character in the game won't do it. So the illusion here is that the ego even exists at all. The device is what's actually operating the character in the game, and the device thinks that there's someone controlling it from the outside because it talks to the device a lot. So that voice, the ego, is just an illusion. So where does that leave the true self existing? Well, let's look at this from a different angle. What's missing from this equation? We've got this game going on and we're all playing in it, but what's causing this game to exist in the first place? Where is God, the source? Now, I'm just going to refer to this as source. This is the power beyond the physical universe that is making the physical universe exist. Everything in the physical universe is emanating from source. Or in our analogy here, this is what's making the video game possible. And this is where I'm able to go a dimension beyond the allegory of the cave and why I'm going to win a Nobel Prize for philosophy over this. Yeah, right. My hat's not small enough to win one of those. Okay, let me start putting this all in order, and you're going to get this in a way that you never have before. We're going to start off with the game over here. There's the entire physical universe. Behind each character in that game is a device that's controlling the character in the game. And that device is your brain. Now, we're going to put a line right here, and that's dividing the physical universe, everything in existence, the game, from the ethereal realm, the realm above, heaven, whatever you want to call it. And in this ethereal realm, you have God, source, emanating everything that is needed for that game to happen. Now, check this out. We're going to break down source into the individual components that are making that video game possible. Now, what's required for that video game to be played on millions of devices all around the world? Well, you got to have electricity to power the device, and then you have to have all of the information, the internet, to make the game possible. And we'll talk about how it's all transmitted to each device here in a second. Now, the Hindu Trinity seems to be the most advanced explanation that there is that I've heard. So you have the generator that is producing the electricity. Well, that is Vishnu. Vishnu is the source that preserves, maintains, produces the energy that is needed to make the game possible. Then you have Brahma, who is the creator of the universe. He has all of the information necessary for this game to be possible. So Vishnu is the power source, Brahma is the internet server, and then you have Shiva, the destroyer, which they don't mean that in a malice way. It's just for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And when you get down to the wave function of the power that's going into the universe, you start out at neutral, then you go up the positive side, and then back down to neutral, in and out of existence, and then down to the negative side and back up to neutral, in and out of existence. This is what Walter Russell was explaining in his explanation of the physical universe. So this is the yin and the yang. If you have Vishnu, the power source, bringing things into existence, then inevitably they're going to fall back out. In Newtonian physics, this would be the law of entropy. And seriously, to me, this just all fits together so good. I mean, what I'm picturing in my mind from a different direction, they have listed exactly right here. When people come to the same conclusions from separate directions, that's usually a good sign. So now everybody understands source, right? You've got the electricity to power it. You've got the information to code and format the game. And then you have Shiva, the collapsing phase of the wave function. Now let's apply all of that to the physical universe. Source is transmitting everything needed for that video game to be possible out to millions of devices all around the world. Each of those devices are our brains. And you can even break that down into its component pieces. The pineal gland is what is receiving the internet connection from source. Or in our analogy, it's the device's antenna. It's what's receiving the signal. You guys see how great all this works? Now, the device, our brain, has this illusion that is being controlled by something we're calling the ego. This is something that doesn't really exist anywhere. It just exists in our minds, because here's the ethereal realm over on the left, and then here's the physical realm over here on the right. But does anything that ego do ever actually manifest on the game board? No. It's just if we let that thing control our mind. In reality, there is just source sending a signal to the device, and then the device playing a character in the game. That ego can sit up there and yell everything it wants to yell, but unless the signal that is going through that device decides to do that with the character, then that voice only exists in our head. We have created an artificial intelligence inside of ourselves. The only real intelligence, the only real creator, the only real thing is the source that is making the game possible. And we are just the device that the source is playing on. The entire universe is just God experiencing itself. But when a part of God goes through each, the internet is huge and it's reaching out to millions and millions of devices, but each device is only playing one character in the game on the game board. So each device only has the record of what that specific character has done and only has that information to draw from. But you are just a small speck of the information of the electricity that is going into the overall game. And you can even break that down further into the soul being just one electron of the overall electrical flow of source. Your soul is just one electron in the overall energy grid. And your soul enters the game with enough energy to get through one lifetime, and then it fades back out. If that's the case, then where do you go when you die? Back to the charging station, back to source. And apparently once you get a full charge, then you come back into the game unless you just permanently merge with source. Now, let's go even deeper than that. What happens if there's no device in this equation? No devices anywhere, because right now the game's being played on millions of devices all around the world. What if you take all of those devices out? Do you still have a world? Well, I don't think so, because source doesn't have a way of playing the game anymore. It can project it out there, but without anything to receive it, well, then it's like an internet signal hitting a stick. It's not going to do anything. So the millions of devices that are out there are essential for this game to even be played. We are millions of different points of view of the same game board. And now check this out. Your device, your brain, determines what your character is capable of in this world. So a smart human is like the latest MacBook with a great internet connection. A person of average intelligence is like my 10-year-old Asus that takes forever to do anything on. But then a cow is like an old flip phone. It can't even text. It can just make calls. It doesn't have all of the capabilities that the more advanced MacBook has, right? So there you have it, guys. I think this is the best explanation I've ever heard on how this all works. And I don't mean that in a boastful way. If somebody else had come up with this, I'd say the same thing. But honestly, when you get down to it, it's just being broadcast through me from source. And once you realize that, then it's actually kind of hard to be boastful about things and all full of yourself, because you're just this little piece on the puzzle, Not saying that doesn't still happen to me all the time, but when I'm getting into philosophical, spiritual things, I realize that I'm just tapping into something that is greater than me. There's something out there that's projecting this whole thing. It's all emanating from source. And I'm just picking up on a little bit of the signal. You're picking up on a little bit of the signal. And we're all playing here on the same game board. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. That's the most brain power I put into anything for quite a while. But man, it just seems to make a lot of sense. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed it. Static out.